Hi everyone. Today we're going to go through the theoretical morning of the modern mind. So this article is on like the concept of the modern human mind, um, and come from. There's like a lot of arguments that go like for against like certain concepts. Okay, so everyone should know. So what does the word Homo sapien mean? It just means us. The modern human. Yeah. So Homo sapiens originated in like Africa, of course. Basic evidence for this is remains found in 2005 in the country of Ethiopia. That just makes the like emergence of Homo sapiens be at least from like 195,000 years ago. Okay, so within the Homo sapien timeline, it splits off into two eras. The middle and upper paleo Paleolithic. So the like concept that like separates the two eras is the concept of behavioral revolution, which happened like around like 50,000 years ago to 40,000 years ago. So the middle Paleolithic era focuses on when humans were using just simple stone tools, advanced, while the upper Paleolithic era uses more complex and sophisticated practices and tools like tradition, farming, and like all that good stuff. So, in between the two eras, and there was a change, and this was a like genetic um, change affected the like neuronal structure of humans. And because of this mutation, it made it easier for humans to speed up innovation and improve upon communication like language. And this mutation also happened when humans began to move into Europe. And of course, like people with this mutation had an easier time outperforming those who didn't have the mutation. Aside from this mutation, so there was other hominids alongside the Homo sapiens. One example is the Neanderthal.
There's an ongoing debate regarding what defines cognitive ability, and a big aspect of it revolves around symbols. Some archaeologists think that the definition of what higher cognitive function would be the distinguishing point between the upper and middle Paleolithic eras. Some see the definition to encompass the material culture of both modern and hunter-gatherer times. Others wanted to focus on symbolically organized behavior, which includes language. A problem with appealing to symbolism is that symbolism isn't unique to humans. Neanderthals were also capable in creating their own culture. An example of this is in how they buried their dead. Discoveries outside of Europe and Asia can help us better flesh out an understanding of what that higher function would be. So how did we change? For symbolism, the ability of the Homo sapien mind to understand symbolism probably appeared at least 195,000 years ago, explaining the early appearance of symbols in the archaeological record. There was a volcanic eruption roughly 70,000 years ago. In a subsequent 1,000-year ice age, Stanley Ambrose theorizes that humans who cooperated and shared resources during this time were most likely to survive, forming a tribal structure. 35 to 45,000 years ago, humans invented throwable weapons, enabling us to hunt bigger and more dangerous animals easier, and additionally hunt other humans. John Shea argues these weapons encouraged humans to cooperate and further develop our social network, where information could be easily shared. It also led us to forming larger groups, such as tribes. As the population grew, human organization grew as well, primarily in competition of resources between different groups. It is argued that the tension between these groups was a way to pass on their traditions effectively, rather than just dying with the last member of a group. Modern human behavior emerged over a long period in a process more aptly described as evolution rather than revolution. Cognitive modernity may have evolved in other hominid species like Neanderthals. Many of the components of a modern human behavior are said to have emerged after the behavioral revolution. However, there are instances where objects before the behavioral revolution, 40,000 years ago, had a comparable level of sophistication to the objects dated more recently. There were 400,000-year-old wood-throwing spears from a site in Germany, and a 233,000-year-old figurine from a site in Israel. That is obviously a lot more long ago, than 40,000 years ago. Continuing that thought, barbed harpoons carved from bone that date to at least 80,000 years ago share the complexity of those harpoons, now comparable to those found 25,000 years ago, in Europe. Not just in design, but in the material too. The choice of the material, being bone and ivory, is not thought to have occurred until the later Stone Age or the Upper Paleolithic era. Adding to that is in the remains of Nile catfish, there was pieces of what looked like harpoons. This suggests that seasonal mapping of fish occurred, something previously thought to occur with later humans much later on. That would be an example of higher level of cognitive thinking. So where did we go? While humans who looked like this had evolved roughly 195,000 years ago, humans didn't start to behave like us till roughly 150,000 years ago. This is evidenced by artifacts left behind by European humans and European Neanderthals some 40,000 years ago. This 40,000 years is also that behavioral revolution talked about earlier. Some of these Neanderthals even appear to have the capacity for symbolic thought, evidenced by some of their cultural remains, mainly being how some buried their dead, and a fishhook with a hole in it, which would be something like a necklace of sorts, we would think. There was also the Twilight Cave. This cave is dated back to the later Stone Age, 45 to 50,000 years ago. Researcher named Ambrose and his team found artifacts dating back 43,000 years, with some of them appearing to be gifts used to maintain good relationships, so like necklaces, rings, stuff like that. What else did we leave behind? There are some Neanderthal-made pierced teeth found in France. The oldest painting found in Africa, in Namibia, dated 28,000 years ago. An ivory water bird found in Germany is among the earliest of its kind depicting an animal, found 30 to 35,000 years ago. Some heat-treated red ochre, possibly used in ritual burial, found in Israel 92,000 years ago. And ostrich eggshell bead found in Tanzania that is 40,000 to 200,000 years old. Those last two are important, being 92,000 years old, and if the ostrich eggshell beads are over 40,000 years old, that would lend credence to the behavioral revolution idea. There's a cave in South Africa, and in this cave, they found bone tools and unusual stones dated back to 75,000 years, which predates the behavioral revolution. This is important because they found 9 slabs of engraved red ochre and a dozen tiny beads. These are more for symbolic uses, as the red ochre would probably be used for some sort of artwork or something like that, or some burial ritual. And as you can see in the pictures, the pattern on there appears to be premeditated and wouldn't just be something that you would just so happen to doodle on there. So, does that show some higher form of cognitive ability? Even though there are examples of human cognitive prowess older than 50,000 years ago, that doesn't necessarily mean the humans of that era were sophisticated like we are today. Just like how correlation does not mean causation, however, the absence of evidence doesn't mean that there isn't evidence. It can be possible that there's more evidence of them doing these complex actions, but we just haven't found it yet. Or other uh, powers that be, or like the environment itself, could interfere in finding these types of things. In the 17th century, when Europeans arrived in Tasmania, they found that the Tasmanian people didn't have modern tools. They were using basic stone tools, for example. Archaeologists found complex tools such as bone tools, fishing nets, and bows dating back several thousand years prior. The Tasmanians had the latest technology at the time, before the sea levels rose and cut the island off from the mainland. At any given point, people don't fulfill their entire potential. And that concludes our presentation today. Thanks for watching.